Smile is a 2022 horror movie that was quickly declared a sleeper hit in theaters. Critics and audiences alike lauded the film for its psychological elements, haunting imagery, and for being a horror film with developed themes around a major social issue. The sequel, Smile 2, released in 2024 to similarly rave reviews and box office success, paving the way for what is sure to be a successful franchise for years to come. And I absolutely hate them. While it's true that the Smile films discuss a major societal issue, I find what the movies have to actually say on said issue to be tone-deaf at best and actively malicious at worst, using the pain of struggling people for pathos while condemning those same people with a message of utter hopelessness. Which means this'll be a fun video to make, right? Crappy licensed kids will be a vacation after revisiting this bullshit. Our lead character of the first film is Dr. Rose Cotter, played by Sosie Bacon, a therapist who works for a hospital's emergency psychiatric unit. If that's a real thing. I have problems with this character right off the bat because despite being a therapist whose job is to help critical mental patients, she only ever seems to give them generic cold platitudes. Her first patient is a man freaking out that everyone he knows is going to die someday, and this is what Rose has in response.
What you're experiencing feels real, but it can't hurt you.
Yeah, cheer up. The looming specter of inevitable death can't hurt you. She's so bad that the movie has to flat out tell us that she's a good doctor by calling Rose into her boss's office for a speech about patients over profits.
Maybe the board should try giving a shit about the point of our job here.
Rose is a workaholic who spends almost all her time at the hospital. Great! So the patients have no escape from her! And she's haunted by dreams of her mother, who died when Rose was a child. What did she die from? Well, given that she's surrounded by all of the booze bottles, pills, and cigarettes to spell it out to the back row, I'm gonna guess mauled by a tiger? Rose gets a new patient, Laura, who was brought in by the police, and Laura's been having problems ever since her professor killed himself in front of her. Now Laura insists that she's being stalked by a demon that disguises itself as regular people. And what is Rose's response to all this?
What you're experiencing feels incredibly real. Sometimes when we get emotionally overwhelmed,
you are a bad doctor! Laura flips out until she seems to enter some kind of trance, stands there with a creepy-ass smile on her face, and Laura kills herself by carving her own face with a shard of pottery. I will say that's a really creepy visual, but does the Joker know that you stole his shtick? Rose has to give a witness statement to the police, and this is where the film's commentary starts to kick in, since the cops are less than sympathetic to Laura's obvious mental health problems. A statement on how the media and society tend to treat the mentally ill as completely disposable.
Yeah, she sounds fucking crazy to me.
Oh look, now the camera's swerving upside down to look cool and show the world tilted on its head. Dude, Madam Web used that same trick. You're not special. Rose goes home to relax with her pet cat, dead, and she sees Laura's ghost is haunting her, which is a lot creepier than the first of many obnoxious jump scares that punctuates it. Rose confides her trying day to her fiancé, and you can tell that she's just super broken up about it.
a patient died today. It happened right in front of me. It was awful.
Alright, Sosie Bacon is not a bad actress. She sells the hell out of the physicality of the part later, but almost all of her lines are delivered with a flat monotone that almost makes scenes unintentionally funny. They go to dinner with Rose's sister and brother-in-law, and here we get some more building of the movie's themes. Brother-in-law has about as dignified an opinion on the mentally ill as the cops do.
There have to be plenty of crazies out there who will actually pay you for your time.
And Rose refuses to sell the house where their mother died because she can't let go of her traumatic past. This is the first of many hints that the smile demon is a metaphor for mental illness. Laura also mentioned having trauma in her past and basically described mental illness when explaining the demon's effects. And if you think I'm pulling that out of my ass, they make it explicit later on. Rose passes by her patient from earlier with another Joker smile, who acts possessed and rants at Rose that she's going to die until she has him restrained. And this somehow lands her in her boss's office. The implication is supposed to be that nobody else saw the guy going nuts, but it's presented like a scene is missing.
I suppose I could have misinterpreted the situation and overreacted.
You're going to die! You're going to die!
Results the same, Rose is put on leave. Thank God! Which, hey, now she can go to her nephew's birthday party. She even drops by a train store to get him a present because the kid, I guess, is an uber nerd. Rose tries to unwind at home, but she can't because we get 3 cheap jump scares in about a minute. The house alarm goes off. Then there's a sting with a ringing telephone. And then the phone voice gets creepy and there's another ringing telephone sting. Later on, she listens back to a recording that she took of her brief interview with Laura, and she thinks that she might hear something in the distance. We're blatantly telegraphing another jump scare.
You know, most good horror movies can establish an atmosphere of danger and dread without screaming in the audience's face every 30 seconds.
Rose goes to see her psychiatrist, played by Robin Wiegert, who's actually a really strong representation of a mental health professional. She's a calming and strong presence. She doesn't shoot down what Rose says, no matter how crazy it sounds, but she still has constructive and helpful feedback. So it's not that the movie just doesn't know how to write or direct doctors, it's just that Rose sucks. The psychiatrist diagnoses that Rose is avoiding processing her trauma from her mother's death, and given her workaholism and lack of sleep, she's not taking proper care of herself. And when Rose asks for medication for a quick and easy way out, the doctor refuses because she needs a better grasp on the situation. Regardless of the audience knowing that Rose is being haunted by a demon, this is the correct outcome for a mental health crisis. The doctor needs a better diagnosis before just hucking pills at it, because the wrong prescription could make things worse. The movie clearly at least has some kind of grasp on how mental illness and the mental health profession work, which makes its implications later down the line even more dangerous. Rose goes to her nephew's birthday party, and even surrounded by family and friends, she's presented as isolated inside her own head. Another fairly accurate portrayal of someone having mental problems. But shit really hits the fan when the kid opens Rose's birthday present. Congrats, boy! I know how much you always wanted a dead cat. So, Rose bought a train toy for her nephew, got the train boxed, took the train out of the box, killed her cat and put it back in the box, still had the mental capacity to wrap the present, and somehow doesn't remember any of it. That's a thing. Questions aside, this is a haunting scene capturing the sheer pain, awkwardness, humiliation, and horror of a family member having a mental health episode in public. The movie and Sosie Bacon's performance do a great job capturing this heart-wrenchingly painful moment. And when the ghost that nobody else can see spooks Rose to where she falls through a glass table, I'm sure that her own actions resulting in cuts across her arms isn't symbolism for self-harm or anything. The film's commentary continues as Rose's fiancé doesn't want to hear anything about his future wife's mental health problems and reveals that he's actually researched her family history for genetic illnesses because he's afraid she'll ruin his life. Again, this is reflective of the real-life prevailing attitude towards the mentally ill, the idea that everyone else except the actual patient is what's important. See also, pretty much every game made by Bloober Team before they hired consultants for the Silent Hill 2 remake. They start playing up the paranoia angle to where Rose never feels safe and thinks that she's never alone, and given all the shots of blackness to imply that something's there, on top of the gaslighting, not being able to go to the cops, and the sabotaging of familial relationships, I'm starting to feel like they're just ripping off Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man, a genuinely brilliant horror film from 2 years prior that also uses its monster as an allegory for a real-world issue. At least I hope they were ripping off The Invisible Man and not Truth or Dare, another movie about a smiling demon that drives you to suicide. Rose goes to talk to the wife of the professor who killed himself to traumatize Laura, and you know what we haven't had for a while? Another pointless jump scare! Great. Wait, the professor was married to Carla from Scrubs? Wow, she must have dumped Turk after he starred in Skyline. I can't say I blame her. It turns out the professor also had mental health problems stemming from a dead brother, and he got the curse when a woman killed herself at a conference, and apparently the professor made tons of artwork of the demon in radically different art styles that are blatantly from several different artists. Luckily, one of the cops working Laura's case is Rose's ex, and he finds a whole string of victims who passed on the demon by committing suicide in front of the next victim. And you can tell that Rose is shaken by this knowledge.
And what was her name, the woman? Can you do me one more favor? Do you have a printer?
Bish, I know you can act! Rose goes home to find her fiancé has called her psychiatrist behind her back, which, yeah, that probably was the right thing to do, but mental health issues are such an intensely personal matter that she still perceives it as another betrayal and storms out.
Rotten hell, crapface!
Next, Rose tries to get help from her sister, where the movie again spells to the back row that the demon is a metaphor for mental illness.
This is exactly what happened to Mom. You sound just like her.
The commentary continues as Rose's sister blames Rose like having a mental illness is her own fault, and blames Rose for traumatizing her son. As much as you can sympathize with the sister wanting to protect her family, she's still hanging her own flesh and blood out to dry because she doesn't understand the issue and thinks Rose and their mother before her are doing this on purpose. So anyway, jump scare. Yeah, that's totally more effective horror than immersing us in the lead's desperation born from realistic reactions to the mentally ill. Aunt Rose is either having a mental breakdown or they're playing Happy on the radio again. Cop X calls to reveal that he found a victim of the demon who survived by murdering someone with a witness nearby to pass the curse on. Said survivor also explains that the demon feeds on trauma, in case you still don't get the point.
This thing needs trauma to spread. That's what gives it power.
Good as the writing can be, though, it feels like this is the 7th or 8th time that Rose has tried to explain the demon, and it's starting to get repetitive.
Something that pretends to be other people. But you can see it. Nobody else can see it except for me. The things that he was seeing, they're real. Evil spirit or energy, it killed my patient.
Also, if the demon is a metaphor for mental illness, why does killing someone get rid of it? Is that meant to represent the connection between mass shooters and mental illness? Or are you just as big a fan of Final Destination 5 as I am? Rose declares that she won't kill someone else to save her own ass, but then she fixates on the crime scene photos, which agitates her further until she bites herself and stares at the kitchen knives like she's contemplating suicide. These are the scenes where Sosie Bacon shines, where she needs to portray Rose's rapidly deteriorating mental state without any dialogue. Rose's psychiatrist drops by to try and help, but then the psychiatrist calls on the phone, meaning the ghost provided Rose with free therapy just to troll her. Rose goes back to the hospital and decides to give that whole murder thing a shot after all, and tries to kill her patient from the start of the movie. Only it turns out that the hospital visit was a dream sequence, the bona fide classic screenwriting cop-out. Hell, Kal Penn, her boss, was so mad at that twist that he tore his own face off in protest. Rose at this point is at the end of her rope and decides to go to her mother's abandoned house to write out her problems alone, and it's here that we get a flashback to where her issues began. Rose's mom was dying of a drug overdose and begged Rose to call an ambulance, but child Rose was so terrified and confused at her mother's inebriated episodes that she just ran away and her mother died. The guilt and trauma have been weighing on her ever since and are now fueling the demon. As such, the final form the demon takes to destroy Rose is her sick mother, which, I might have gone for some pants while you were at it. But Rose finally confronts the trauma and guilt that have haunted her entire life and lets go of her past by burning down the house that she adamantly refused to sell at the start of the movie, finally defeating the demon and its true form as a doofy-looking hair metal band reject. Seriously, the ghost rocker from Trick or Treat was scarier than this. Well, I must say, that was a pretty good horror movie. It's a little derivative in its writing and execution, but it clearly understands mental health and crafted a gripping narrative around metaphors for a real-world issue. Our hero triumphed by facing up to her trauma, goes to make amends with her ex, and starts down the road to recovery and starts taking better care of herself. All the movie has to do now is go 5 more minutes without completely torpedoing its entire message and themes. Shit! So, the film's climax was another dream sequence, and even though Rose faced and conquered her trauma, the demon that feeds on said trauma kills her anyway. The movie ends with Rose burying herself to death to give her ex the curse. The end.
I don't get it. The demon is a metaphor for mental illness, and Rose treated her mental illness, so why did she still die?
Following the metaphor that they built their entire film around, the movie's message is now that treatment doesn't work and mental illness is a death sentence. I'm not the only one who sees this, right? Why in God's name would you make a movie monster an overt metaphor for a real-world issue that millions of people struggle with, and then make the actual text of the movie that said metaphor is impossible to survive? What the hell is the matter with you? And the fact that the rest of the movie talks at least halfway intelligently about mental health problems only makes this ending sting worse, because it makes their horrible implications seem halfway credible. I know that it's just a trope of the horror genre when ghosts or demons are concerned to have a fake-out good ending where our heroes follow the rules and still get killed, but when your monster represents a real-world issue, you don't stick to the tropes for authenticity's sake and push a bleak-ass outlook on something that affects millions of vulnerable people! And this isn't even the only media I've watched lately that seem to have solid themes of mental health, only to detonate them at the last minute! Just as a bit of an intermission between the two movies, let's talk about Gen V for a moment. Gen V was a spin-off series of The Boys about a group of young adults training to be superheroes at a college, and while the show's commentary was largely focused on higher education, abuse in athletic programs, and celebrity culture, it also had a heavy emphasis on mental health. The lead character cut herself and was racked by trauma. The roommate was bulimic. One was struggling with their sexual identity and societal expectations. One was an abuse victim. Each of the leads was struggling with some kind of mental health issue, but they formed their own support system where they leaned on each other and worked through their problems. The show lost a few points for the only psychiatrist around being the main villain, painting the entire field as hokum at best and active predatory grooming at worst, but it was still a hopeful and positive representation of mental health issues. Up until its season 1 finale. See, one of the characters lets loose a bunch of patients from a mental hospital, and it turns out that every single mental health patient is a school shooter. Every last one of those patients immediately starts mass murdering the entire school, complete with references to Columbine, with what is implied to be zero external prodding to do so. Wow! Fuck you, Gen V! Fuck you playing into every harmful stereotype about mental illness that exists!
Sorry for the digression. I didn't know when I was going to get another chance to vent about this topic.
Okay, the first Smile movie was a pretty solid horror flick up until its ending completely destroyed everything that it was trying to do, but I still gave them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were just sticking to the tropes of the genre out of obligation and didn't think through the ending's implications. Maybe they learned their lesson for the sequel, Smile 2, that released 2 years later. Yeah, they didn't learn shit. Smile 2 not only doubles down on the first movie's bleak-ass outlook on mental health, it's quite frankly a garbage movie in its own right. But before we start, can I just bring up the movie's poster for a minute? This doesn't look like a demonic smile. This looks like someone's tying a red gag over Naomi Scott's mouth. Smile 2 opens with Cop X from the first one 6 days after the original's ending. He's decided that if he needs to kill someone to lose the curse, he might as well use it up on some drug dealers. Actually, that reminds me, by the end of the first movie, the X already knows how the demon works. Couldn't he have just, closed his eyes, not watched Rose's horrible death, stopped the curse from spreading to him? I don't know. Anyway, there's a shootout and the two drug dealers both die, which I guess doesn't fit the ghost's rules for passing on. But then another dealer and some enforcers storm the house, and even though the cop was just freaking out that there weren't any more people nearby to pass the curse onto, he runs away from the people he could pass the curse onto. And then he gets hit by a truck, and even though this isn't remotely how the demon works, he still passed the curse onto the dealer in the house who probably didn't see shit, because this movie's mantra is, the ghost has no rules anymore. And the movie's in association with bad feeling. At least the film's honest about it. Now we're introduced to our new protagonist, Skye Riley, played by Naomi Scott. Skye is a pop star whose music sounds suspiciously like Taylor Swift, and who's fresh out of rehab after surviving a car accident that took the life of her boyfriend. Now she's sober and planning a major comeback tour, despite the fact that she, seems to still be having some problems. Yes, people pulling out their own hair just to exert some desperate control over their lives is a real thing.
And no, that is not what happened to me. I have genetics to thank for this, jackass!
Skye is surrounded at all times by her token gay assistant and her controlling mother who runs her business. And the car wreck also seems to have left her with a spinal injury. So maybe don't choreograph a dance routine where about 5 people grab you by the spine. And what new song is Skye working on? Wow. Subtle. Even before all the demon shit kicks off, they do a good job showing how suffocating Skye's life is. They shun pretty much all the glitz and glamour from a life of stardom to fixate on the negative, which is exactly what someone suffering from depression or the like would be doing in this situation. Skye sneaks out to get some pain meds for her back, but her dealer is the guy who got the curse earlier, and this dude's demon-induced breakdown is weirdly played for comedy.
What?
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 I'm having the worst week.
The worst!
Though I respect the hell out of a man who answers the door with a katana sword. The dealer dies from the demon's influence, and of course, since they put so much emphasis on him carrying a sword, he kills himself with weightlifting equipment. The gore effects are really good. I probably can't show them to you. So Skye has the curse now, and she didn't even get her Vicodin. You can tell she's cursed because the shot flips upside down again.
Not impressed! I can do that too!
The difficulties of people who still have hair. Also, Skye drinks a lot of water. As someone who's tried bringing a bottle of water to board game night, she should be dashing for the bathroom nonstop. The one thing that makes this movie worth watching is Naomi Scott's performance as the lead character. Her body language portrays Skye's emotions and deteriorating mental state phenomenally well, even before the real horror starts. The movie never stops pounding you with the sheer psychological toll that the pressure, lack of freedom, drive for perfection, body shaming over her scars, and now demonic haunting is having on this woman. And the added stress when a mysterious number texts her and teases her with knowledge that she was with the dealer when he died. Skye has a photo shoot, a rehearsal, and a fan signing, and you can tell she's just dead inside. Honestly, I think this movie would be better if you took out the demon possession and just made a movie about the pressures of stardom driving someone insane. Hell, the demon even gets out-creepied when a crazy stalker fan rushes Skye at a signing. Weirdo Smiling Girl can't compete with that, which is probably why the ghost just slinks off without even leaving a jump scare. Oh, and Skye gets invited to present at a center for poor kids. I bet that doesn't go well. And then the dealer's ghost appears in the mirror. See? You can do creepy horror without having to resort to cheap jump scares. Ah, there we go. Desperate for someone to confide in, Skye calls up Gemma, a friend with whom she's had an unspecified falling out, and asks her to come over. Seriously, just one shot of Skye in the bathroom for a joke. That's all I ask. She tries to relax with some more not hilariously on-the-nose music lyrics.
Made up of broken parts.
Cut that shit out! Geez, no wonder she's being gagged on the poster. I do love the idea that the ghost is so sore that the creeper fan showed him up at the signing that it just used that creeper for his next hallucination, or that the writer thinks that we need to fake out what's stalking her in a sequel to Smile. But Gemma gets there early and the creeper's gone.
How did you get here so fast? You called me like an hour ago.
Sure, why not? Now the ghost can control time. Anybody else get the feeling that it's pointless to get invested in what happens when the movie monster can just alter reality itself? Skye pours her heart out to Gemma on a lot of things. Nobody will prescribe her actual pain meds for her back because of her history of substance abuse. The water thing is meant to be a physical substitute for the urge to abuse substances, and she feels like she's destroyed everything good that she ever touched. As good as this stuff is, Skye has so many friggin' problems piled onto her that the tight and focused narrative of the first movie has been replaced with scattershot theming that's all over the place. Are we focusing on Skye's substance abuse, her trauma from the accident, her suffocating lack of freedom or control, her self-destructive tendencies, her loneliness, the pressures of stardom, her body dysmorphia after being mutilated in a car accident? This woman was a walking train wreck before the ghost of mental health found her. In bed, Skye hallucinates that Gemma is the ghost, but wakes up to find that Gemma is still there. Keep this exact moment in mind, because it plays into how rock stupid the final twists of this movie are. Skye has a rehearsal the next day, and now that we've had a dream sequence showing that her accident included a broken leg, we can just have her leg explode for a cheap jump scare anytime that we want. And then the ghost trashes Skye's dressing room and blames it on the gay guy, which just feels petty at this point. Skye starts having public meltdowns, thinking that all the weird shit around her is a result of people sabotaging her, which struck me as weird because I just now realized that we're a little over an hour in, and she still doesn't know that there are demon shenanigans afoot. Skye gets roped into doing the thing for poor kids where she has to give a speech, but the teleprompter freezes, and she immediately vents and rants about how success didn't fix her and she can't find happiness. Again, the demon doesn't need to work so hard. He's sitting back with some popcorn, watching her melt down all on her own. Then the demon does make an appearance and tricks Skye into knocking some old lady off the stage, I guess. When every single scene of the demon attacking involves a fake-out, it's getting hard to be shocked when something shocking happens. Naomi Scott acting the living hell out of a mental breakdown is the only thing keeping this movie engaging. By this point, I was holding out hope that Smile 2 wouldn't botch its themes of mental health the same way that the first movie did, because even if Skye Riley wanted to seek help, she physically can't. Her life is so dominated by her job and the people around her that she can't even take a day to get her head on straight, let alone to seek therapy. If we're avoiding the minefield of the serious thoughts on mental health treatment, this film might be alright. Here's where that gets shot to hell. The mystery number that's been trying to get in contact with Skye says he believes that something is haunting her and shares a video the dealer posted to prove it. Mostly this is a prelude to a cheap jump scare. But the mystery number invites Skye to a bar to explain himself. This is Morris, the brother of one of the prior victims, who's been tracking the demon and knows how it works. Okay, one, weird not to have this be a character from the first movie when they have like 3 survivors who should know how the ghost works. And 2, why the fuck did Morris wait about 3 whole days before making a serious effort to reach out to Skye? This demon kills on a time limit, you chowderhead! Morris reinforces that the demon is still a mental health allegory.
I feel like I'm losing my goddamn mind.
That's precisely what this thing does to you. It feeds off all the bad shit in your head.
And he says that the demon will die if the host dies outside of the demon's control, even though that's what happened to the cop at the start of the movie and it didn't do shit. And so the only way for Skye to defeat the demon is by committing suicide.
If I die before it kills me?
Exactly. We need to kill you first.
Oh my god, they just said the quiet part out loud.
So according to this movie, the only way to escape the allegory for mental illness is to commit suicide. But more specifically, to commit suicide quickly, before you traumatize other people and ruin other people's lives. Because everyone else, besides the actual victim, is the important part in a mental health crisis, right? There's no way out. You just have to up and kill yourself before your metaphor for mental illness causes damage to anyone else. That is the literal text of the movie at this point. To be fair, they try and dance around the implications by saying that Morris wants to stop her heart to drive out the demon and then revive her, but that's still attempting suicide. And there's a line later that reinforces the garbage message that people with mental illness should kill themselves because they have no other hope of escape. What in the actual living fuck? Naturally, Skye takes all this news well. And then Skye sees a horde of just random people filling up her apartment, smiling at her in these really goofy, exaggerated poses straight out of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Seriously, who are these people supposed to be? The people that recognized her at the bar? The people at the signing? Her backup dancers? What does this scare have to do with anything? Does Skye also live in constant fear of being asked how a hand tastes? We get a full flashback showing Skye's car accident that caused her initial breakdown. She and her boyfriend were driving on a narrow cliffside road. They presumably got high and started arguing, and then Skye grabbed the steering wheel and intentionally veered them both off a cliff.
You think that's bad? You should see what happened to the last driver who went down that road.
Okay, this reveal doesn't work. Rose's trauma was caused by a genuine fight or flight response to a situation that she didn't understand because she was a child. You buy that it was an honest mistake, but you also get how that could screw up a person for life. Maybe this sequence was meant to be Skye attempting suicide once before, and I don't mean to demean drug addiction if this is a realistic portrayal, but Skye's accident is staged like she deliberately committed murder in a childish tantrum, and the rest of the movie is the easily foreseeable consequences of her own actions. Put simply, I don't feel bad for this character anymore. Skye wakes up in a clinic and tries to get out of the tour, but I don't think Skye has enough problems. Let's tack on an abusive parent while we're at it.
Arrogant little asshole. I have given up everything for you.
Nobody forced you to be Skye's manager, a job that's probably gotten you millions of dollars off her success. Screw you, lady! The ghost makes Skye's mother get the smile and stab herself to death while Skye bolts for the door, but then it turns out that Skye's actually the one who killed her. How did Skye running away result in her killing her mom and not realizing it? This is always the point in the movie where I've completely checked out because it has exactly one trick that it just keeps doing over and over. It looks like something messed up happens, they reveal that something else messed up happened, and Skye freaks out. Why am I supposed to still care about these scare sequences when the movie will just say, that didn't happen, and make up new bullcrap on the fly? Last scene, the ghost dropped an entire zombie horde on Skye's head, and it didn't even matter. This demon is the ultimate cheap screenwriting cop-out. He can do literally anything with no justification or consequences. And by the third act of Smile 2, it's virtually impossible not to be wise to the act that nothing we see actually matters. Oh, and just to add to the pointless shock and gore budget, Skye steps on some broken glass. For absolutely no other reason than to have a gross close-up shot of Skye pulling glass out of her foot. We're just crossing into cheap exploitation at this point. Skye escapes the clinic and runs into Gemma, who gives her a lift to see Morris, but Skye gets a phone call from Gemma, who hasn't seen her in over a year. Oh wow, exactly the same trick that the demon pulled with the psychiatrist in the first movie. So you remember earlier when Skye saw Gemma smiling in bed, then woke up from that hallucination to see Gemma still in her apartment? Skye woke up to another hallucination, meaning that this sequence was a dream within a dream. And again, why does this ghost keep providing its victims with free therapy? They are at least trying to keep up the mental health discussion as the ghost tells Skye that nobody cares about her, the exact kind of self-harm thoughts that someone with her problems would have. But this entire third act is such hackneyed bullshit that I don't really care anymore. Skye drives to Morris's location and he lays out his plan. He set up shop in an old Pizza Hut.
I already never order from Pizza Hut, but now I'm gonna boycott them on purpose over this sponsorship deal.
He's going to lock Skye in the freezer and give her an injection to stop her heart. The freezer will keep her from going brain dead for a few minutes, so he can give her an adrenaline shot to bring her back to life once the ghost is gone. They dance around saying it out loud, but let's be blunt. This is an assisted suicide facility. Morris asks Skye what got her to change her mind.
Every good thing in my life ends up broken because of me. It doesn't matter what happens to me anymore.
Skye's big heroic moment is when she gives up and accepts her fate. The fate of mental illness is gonna kill you anyway, so get it out of the way now before you mess with someone else.
This is the point where these movies cross over into suggesting that the mentally ill should kill themselves because their situation is hopeless anyway. Suicide is presented as the noble and selfless solution. As someone who's lost a family member to both mental illness and suicide, it is not some selfless sacrifice for the greater good. It scars your loved ones for the rest of their days, wondering if they could have stopped it, and deathly afraid they'll lose someone else to the same fate. Suicide is not the noble solution. It's a tragedy of the desperate and the vulnerable. Funny how the first movie made villains of the people saying that everyone but the actual patient is important, and then the sequel wholeheartedly agrees with them. The movie decides that Skye's biggest problem, of the entire mountain of problems they've given her, is that she hates herself, so the demon takes on the form of younger Skye for the final encounter. And the way that injured Skye repeatedly wails painfully in a deeply unpleasant way, I'm starting to wonder if this director just gets off on torturing women. At least the demon doesn't look friggin' stupid this time. But after a brief fight, Skye wins by injecting herself with the suicide drug. And that's when the movie pulls the biggest bullshit stunt that a movie can pull. Skye wakes up perfectly fine on a stage for her tour, wearing an outfit that she flat out refused earlier in the movie. Her mom is perfectly fine. She's completely uninjured. The entire movie has been a dream. None of it actually happened. I try not to bring a movie or game's critical reception into my reviews, but seriously, how the hell did this movie get near universally rave reviews when it pulls the biggest cop-out that nobody tolerates anywhere else? This twist ending means that certain chunks of this movie are a dream within a dream within a dream. You usually have to go for Christopher Nolan movies to get that confusing. Not to mention this reinforces both movies' themes that mental illness is a hopeless death sentence, because once this demon gets you, the mental illness metaphor will rewrite reality itself to where you always lose. Skye kills herself on stage, presumably spreading the demon to thousands of people. The end. Congratulations on writing yourself into a corner for Smile 3, and I don't mean the mass number of victims that you're going to have to address. I mean that everyone's going to walk into the third movie knowing that none of it's real, which means that it's completely pointless to get invested into any future films in the series. And I didn't even know this beforehand because I bolted the fuck out of the theater the second that the credits rolled. But the credits play a bunch of Skye's tortured screams and crying, edited to try and sound like music. Seriously, this has to be some kind of torture porn at this point. And before we wrap up, let me just get ahead of some of the arguments that I've heard. Not every horror movie needs a happy ending. Well, duh. Some of my favorite horror movies are Late Night with the Devil, Final Destination 5, and Candyman 2021. And spoiler warning, none of them have happy endings. The issue is that the Smile films are written and structured to continually reinforce that a happy ending is impossible, which is a fucked up stance to take when the movie is directly talking about a real-world issue that affects millions of vulnerable people. You're just overthinking the movie. Just turn your brain off and enjoy it. You're seriously busting out the same useless straw man argument that people use for Michael Bay's Transformers? I'm sorry, but when the movie's monster is purposefully a direct allegory for a massive societal issue, how much are you supposed to think about it? I could maybe see that argument for ignoring the anti-corporate themes of Aliens and The Matrix, because that's just one theme in a densely packed movie, but the Smile films are deliberately set around throwing this issue into your face over and over again. At that point, you're ignoring the entire movie to focus exclusively on a few gore highlights. If the whole movie was a dream, then Morris wasn't real and the suicide message was fake. So if the movie loudly yells that it's discussing an important issue, and then says not to pay attention to anything because it's not real, that means it's a shitty goddamn movie! What else was Skye supposed to do? The demon was only vulnerable to a suicide attempt. You do know that the demon isn't a real-life entity, right? This thing runs on whatever rules the writer says it does. They purposefully engineered a situation where suicide is the only way out because it's how they wanted the story to end. Either because they didn't think through the implications, or they did, and it's just what they actually think about the subject. Although I keep saying they, both Smile movies have a single writer who is also their director, Parker Finn. And if you're wondering what else the dude has written, nothing. He's written and directed the Smile movies, a short called Laura Hasn't Slept that ties into the Smile movies, and a 10-minute short from 2018 called The Hide Behind. That's it. I think we're zoning in on why these movies don't seem to think through their subject matter and implications. I hate these movies. The first Smile was actually a pretty effective horror movie with solid tension, suspense, atmosphere, and themes, up until the climax where the movie completely shot itself in the foot and undermined its entire message. Smile 2 is just a mess, an unfocused script, scattershot scares, and the movie's monster lost any semblance of rules to where the movie can just be made up on the fly. The only redeeming quality the second has is Naomi Scott's friggin' intense performance, which is way too good for this hackneyed bullcrap. But the real thing that makes me hate both movies is their joint theme of mental health. The message that both movies push is that mental illness is a death sentence. Treatment only delays the inevitable. You will ruin other lives and drag everyone down with you. And the only correct reaction is to just off yourself right now because you don't matter anymore. And from the bottom of my heart and soul, fuck you for pushing such a harmful, spiteful, heartless message. The sheer hatred behind these movies' themes offends me as a human being and insults me on a personal level. For the past 5 years and change, I've been living with crippling depression and anxiety that just cracked one day to where I started freaking out about climate change and I could not stop for like months on end. You look through some of my older videos where I've always got a Kirby with me. Yeah, that Kirby was my emotional support animal. I don't even know how it worked, but I just did. So I went to a psychiatrist and I got on some medication. I have a little pill that I take once a day and it keeps my brain level. I have rescue pills and some coping mechanisms in case something freaks me out. I've got answers now. And in the last 5 years since I started having these problems, I've met close friends. I've got a better social life than I ever did before. I've started dating again. I invented something at work that got my name on a patent. I'm living. I'm doing fine. But these movies, these Smile movies, they say that I should just off myself right now, right? Because we all know where this is going. You know exactly where my story ends, don't you little impudent piece of worm shit? This basement that I'm sitting in right now, this was built by one of my neighbors. He's a great guy, family man. He does a lot of work for my uncle and his sick wife. Dude's a lifesaver, yeah. He's got depression. There are some days where he just locks himself in his house because he just needs that time to get his head on straight again. These movies say he should off himself too, right? Before he ruins someone else's life. Sean fights demons that would wither a lesser man to dust. I was dating a woman who works with mentally ill kids. Some of them have to live in like a mental hospital. Some of them are cured. Because there's hope. Because you don't get to tell us how our story ends. I want to punch these movies in the fucking soul. But I can't. Because they don't have one. Now, I'm going to go make some sausage balls for Mystery Science Theater night. I'm going to try and get them to watch another Neil Breen movie. Because when Neil Breen screws up a message, at least it's funny!